It's time now for our final session for day 3 in the form of a panel where we have a brilliant market outlook discussion on one of the booming construction markets in Egypt. And I'm very pleased to welcome our moderator for this session, Samar Raouf, the founder of Cairo Business Radio. And pleased to welcome our panelists, Khaled Mostafa, the Director of Strategic Planning at the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, Ahmed Youssef, the Director of Operations at Dar Handasah, Shair and Partners Egypt, and Managing Director of Dar Handasah Egypt Limited. Next is Tarek ElGamal, the Chairman of Redcon Construction. And our final panelist is Abdelnasser Taha, the President and Founder of FIABCI-Egypt. Over to you, Samar.
Thank you, Laura, so much for this warm introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. And welcome to the Big Five Digital Festival in its global format. My name is Samar Raouf. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I'm super excited to be here. Excited to join this group of iconic speakers and experts in the construction sector in Egypt, and excited to talk about a sector that is heavily contributing to the growth of the Egyptian economy. Imagine a country that is constructing 20 new cities from the ground. Imagine a country that is developing 23 existing cities in addition to a number of infrastructure projects. We're talking about construction sector in Egypt, the most populated country in the Middle East. I think it's an exciting time for the sector, and let's not waste any more time with the introduction, and let's take our first question. Let me welcome Mr. Khaled Mostafa, Director of Strategic Planning, Ministry of Planning and Economic Development. Mr. Khaled, very warm welcome to this panel, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, my pleasure. I'm very pleased to be part of this distinguished panel, so thank you. Thank you for having that.
Likewise, thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Khaled, apparently the government is paying great consideration and attention to the construction sector. As we have seen, the biggest budget ever has been allocated this year to construction and infrastructure sector. We have all seen the mega projects in the pipeline, and also it's not only about the funding and investment, but also there are kind of new measures being taken to regulate the sector. We're talking about construction, infrastructure, and real estate business. Would you please share with us the state vision for the construction and infrastructure sector in Egypt?
Thank you, Samar. This is a very important question. In fact, if we look at it from economic development, the way we see the construction sector and real estate sectors, we look at them as what we call driving sectors. So they are driving in multiple ways, in fact. One way, they themselves, on themselves as in economic sectors, they drive the economic growth. This is why they are very important for achieving the targets of economic growth in Egypt. But also they are driving sectors in the sense that they drive other sectors, additional sectors. Automatically, they drive the steel, they automatically drive the construction material, cement, and what have you, etc., etc. So they are very, very important. There is another reason for that importance, aside or in addition to growth. That is, in fact, especially investment in infrastructure projects, has to do with the Vision 2030 for Egypt and how we see Egypt as a hub in the region for a multitude of activities, especially logistics and so on. So it's very important to really have the arteries that avails this, that makes this possible, be it roads, be it other infrastructure projects to support urbanization and so on. On top of that, we have got the new capital, which on its own is going to create a different status for the Egyptian government, a different status for the Egyptian economy. But of course, it's a giga project, which is pulling a lot of construction and a lot of activity. So in a nutshell, we see this as a very, very critical and important sector. We are trying to push and encourage the investment in this sector. On the other hand, as you mentioned, we are trying to up the standards of real estate in particular. I mean, there has been a campaign by the government over the past few months regarding unauthorized buildings and buildings outside urban guidelines, etc., etc. Some people see this as a contradicting message. In fact, it's not. It's actually putting things on the right track, because with the movement towards huge projects, we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. So we want to make sure that we draw a line with the past, correct whatever can be corrected, and draw this line and move forward in quantity, but also in quality. So that's how we see the sector.
So it's kind of that you're encouraging the matured players to continue to support the sector, but those who are a bit newcomers still they don't have the needed muscles to stay there.
I wouldn't say that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I wouldn't say that. We encourage the newcomers as well as the mature developers, but according to certain standards. Not just anything goes. So, in fact, if we talk from a completely different angle, we are encouraging medium companies and small companies. They don't have to take the mega projects themselves, but they can participate, and we avail the opportunities for them to participate. The thing is not against the newcomers, but against lack of standards. So we're trying to set the standards and require everybody to abide by them.
That's fantastic. Now, let me move to the private sector, because we want to see the impact of this mega giga projects that we can see in Egypt. What's the impact on this on the private sector? We're lucky to have Mr. Tarek ElGamal, CEO of Redcon. Mr. Tarek, thank you so much for joining us today, and very warm welcome to this discussion.
Hi, Samar. It's a pleasure being among this wonderful people talking about the construction sector in Egypt. Actually, it's like Khaled just mentioned, it's the main driver now for the economy. This is very clear for the most of the big 5 or even big 10 companies, that their turnover has been maybe doubled over the last 3-4 years, when this mega projects started everywhere. So, and this is for sure, maybe I was having a meeting just before the COVID break. We reached a point where the unemployment rate was 7.8%, and this is, I believe, was the least all-time low. Let me say it this way. Yeah. People are sometimes criticizing that it doesn't have to be the only industry playing in the economy, but if you look at it really in a very good way, it's the driver for everything, for
it's
building
materials. It's the backbone of the.
It's the backbone of everything, and even when we have a discussion with the other sectors, we tell them it's not about us, because we as contractors or EPC contractors, if the tourism is working, we are going to build hotels. If the industry is working, we are going to build plants. So we are here we are serving the whole economy. Whatever sector is moving, we are with it. The problem in Egypt is that even the whole sector, the whole pie was like from 3 or 5 years, it was only, the turnover was only like maybe 10 to 15 billion dollars for the whole sector, for the whole pie: tourism, industry, real estate, even infrastructure, which was really does not reflect Egypt at all, because Egypt is a population of 100 million people. The demographic distribution, 65% below 35 years old. If we compare it to a country like Turkey, the construction sector is like $250 billion a year, and maybe 80% of it is almost outside Turkey. So we're still far. I believe this year or 2019 we reached like $25 billion. So there is still a long way to go. The other sectors for sure have to start moving after the devaluation and this the bailout package from the CBEs, the Central Bank of Egypt, what they call it, the 8% initiative. Actually, it's most of it is allocated to the other sectors. So it's we're here to serve all sectors. So I don't believe that this will maybe for the coming maybe 5 to 10 years we have to stay growing at the same rate, maybe more and more, because the population, as I just mentioned, 65% below 35 years, they need like too many things to be done.
And we are lucky to have Mr. Ahmed Youssef, who is the Director of Operation Dar Handasah Shair and Partner, and Managing Director Dar Handasah Egypt. Mr. Ahmed Youssef, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and very warm welcome to our panel.
The luck and pleasure is all mine, Samar.
Thank you so much.
I'm delighted to be here in this forum.
Oh, well, the pleasure is all ours.
Yes, this distinguished guest.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Not maybe everyone is aware of Dar Handasah, but for those who don't know the brand or not familiar enough with the brand, Dar Handasah is one of the global players, and it's a very important engineering consultancy firm. Dar Handasah has been named as a partner of choice for the Egyptian government in a number of projects. We can mention the Suez Canal corridor, and definitely we can refer to the new administrative capital. Mr. Ahmed, having been a partner and working closely with the government and other stakeholders in the market, in your own opinion, how we can boost this important sector, the construction sector, how we can help it to grow and maybe go beyond the Egyptian borders, go beyond its geographical borders, and start to approach other countries like the African countries, for example?
Thank you. It's a great question. First of all, our slogan in Dar Handasah is making progress together. We partner with all governments in making development in their economies. This is our main goal. It's not only about giving consultancy service, it's giving added value. For answering your question directly, to grow locally, of course, we have to admit that construction is a key driver to the growth of the Egyptian economy. The government has a liability to keep this growth that will affect the GDP growth of Egypt. So what we all think about is we have to attract foreign direct investment. And this can be achieved by the enabling environment, which would comprise a good legislative framework and institutional frameworks that will help boosting the construction industry and attracting investments from foreign countries. Being creative in creating new investment opportunities and interact
عشان انا بس في البيج فايف في حاجه مهمه
interacting with the global, regional,
بصي هقول لك حاجه
national initiatives, opening doors for developments, for development opportunities. So if we talk about the local market, it's mainly driven by infrastructure and housing, which is the real estate. If we speak about the infrastructure, having our big population and the growth in population, this will create continuous demand on infrastructure, and this will always open opportunities for investment in the infrastructure sector. What we need to do is not only to depend on the direct governmental investments, but also encourage public-private partnership, PPP, in order to meet this excessive demand, either here locally or abroad. Also, in the real estate sector, we need to boost it by really creating a real estate mortgage market, a healthy one and efficient one. This, of course, will need at least to create a secondary market for the real estate mortgage bonds. We need to lower the interest rate on the loans for the market, for the mortgage, and give funds from pension funds, from other financing agents, rather than the commercial banks, which have higher interest rates. This, of course, will meet the what's so-called that the growth in the domestic product will have impact to increase the income of the Egyptian people. Once we reach a ratio, a good ratio between the average income of the middle class family and the price of a medium range housing unit, which should not exceed a factor of 3 to 5, this and making the enabling environment for the mortgage market, this will boost the construction industry to a higher and higher level. So this what we see how to boost the construction industry inside our local market. However, if we need to move forward and cross our borders, like in Africa and the region, we need first to be ready. And I mean ready here is that construction industry is based on managing resources. So Egypt has a population, has sufficient manpower. So we need to provide good training to the workers in order to meet the international standards. We need to encourage international construction company to come here and get into joint ventures with the local contractors in order to elevate the standard of the construction industry locally. So we can also export our service industry toward other markets and can compete with the international companies. Also, we need to import and excel the high technologies of the construction industry in order to be able to sell our products outside Egypt. So we need our government to help us in capitalizing on our market size, on the availability of our manpower, to capitalize on our political strengths and geographical location in Africa, and respond to trade treaties and interact with global, regional, and national initiatives, and create alliances in order to be strong enough to compete in the the international market. No one will succeed to compete alone in the in the international market. We need to consolidate and combine all our efforts in order to be stronger, in order to complement each other's, okay, and then create consortiums and alliances that can conquer the African and international market in the region. So this is how we see it, and we are glad to be here, and we are glad to be part of any alliance that will help Egypt and Egypt construction industry to go further and beyond its local border. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed. What a recipe for success. Really, you were too generous sharing all the insights that would help the industry to grow. In your talk, you referred to the real estate sector, and we talked and we heard from the construction player, and we heard about the infrastructure pipeline, but maybe this is time now to go from construction to real estate. So my next question would go to Mr. Abdelnasser Taha. Mr. Abdelnasser Taha is the president and the founder of FIABCI-Egypt chapter, which is the International Federation for Real Estate. Mr. Taha, a very warm welcome to our panel, and thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Samar, and thank you for all the attendees in the panel. I want to capitalize on what was mentioned by Engineer Tarek, ElGamal, and Engineer Ahmed. They are very close friends and colleagues, and they're working in a very professional way. We met several times, and I wish to take this opportunity to start by a small story, because I landed in Dubai 2004, and I was shocked at the takeover to see a huge amount of construction everywhere, and for me it was a big shock. I can tell you that from 5 years, when also I went to the site of the new administrative capital and Al Alamein, there was nothing, and today we are all under the shock. Because what happened, not only in one part, in one city, as you mentioned, in 20 cities, we are running like crazy everywhere. Last 5 years never happened. What happened in the last 5 years never happened before in Egypt. It's really
it's true. It's iconic.
It's a great record, and we are all happy. And even I want to also to mention that the construction market, the construction leaders and the industry suffered a lot during the devaluation, and I was able, with big courage and effort, to absorb what happened of big damage during the devaluation. But they survived, and they continue, and they are now much stronger, and they are taking more complexity in their work, and they are carrying big responsibilities, much more if we compare from 5 years. So at the construction level and the consultancy level, changed too much. Now I want to say that from a few weeks, we made a small video because it was needed from FIABCI, the International Federation of Real Estate, to send to the headquarters and to all other countries. Every country should send what happened in housing in each country. And I can tell you that what we recorded was extremely exceptional, very exceptional.
Great.
What happened in Egypt was nobody can imagine that we built more than 500,000 units in 5 years. Nobody can imagine that 15 cities was under construction with very fast speed, and in roads and in everywhere. But I want to say that we also need to mention our challenges. Egypt, the government, made a lot to bring a new spirit to the country. We are running very, very fast, but this, as you link this to the real estate market, I want to link the real estate market to the urban planning and urban growth everywhere, and also to the overall development of the country.
But Mr. Taha, maybe I don't know, you agree or disagree with me that the real estate sector has been slowing down in the past 2 years, and the impact of COVID-19, it came to further affect the real estate sector. How do you see the performance now? Is it flourishing like the rest of the construction business, or do you believe that the real estate market is kind of like slowing down now, or continuing to slow down?
They call it the bubble.
The bubble, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
In
it's
fact,
the lower part of the cycle now.
Yes, I disagree about the concept of having a bubble, but because scientifically we define this as the type of market. The type of market it cannot collapse in Egypt, cannot collapse like any other in any other city, like in Dubai and other, because what we call it market fundamentals. The population growth of more than 2 million people every year is the biggest, as you mentioned, in the Middle East and maybe in Africa. But we add to this that we have a lot of growth in all other sectors, in education, in retail, in industry, in agriculture, in financial. There is a big dynamics happening last 5 years, not limited to infrastructure, roads, electricity, power, everywhere. So the issues that we have to look to our plan of having an overall development, not limited to real estate, not limited to, because we have to create economic growth. We should, and the government and the private sector should all work together to have an economic growth. Even the financial legislations have to change to encourage people to go to industry and link the industry to all the new cities, because we don't have an economic base enough to give boost to all the cities. Now we have urban and we have roads network, but we have to create also economic basis for all this development everywhere. I think this is the coming phase. The government now is pushing to have more industry and to have more agriculture and to have more economy, and even to finance by mortgage or by all other means the SMEs. So now we are in a second version of boosting the economy, not only to look to the real estate market. For sure, there is some kind of saturation in some sectors, but this is not the end of the story.
So I think, as you rightly mentioned, Mr. Taha, that there is a focus on a bigger picture, and lots of sectors are on the rise now. And maybe there is kind of this slowdown, maybe in different specific segments in the sector, in the real estate sector. I think maybe residential, and even a segment within the residential sector, correct? Which is the luxurious residential, maybe, but the social housing still there is a big need, and that's why the government is very active on this segment.
See, I want to mention that construction is not limited to residential. Now we have a very, very unique chance to change the story of Egypt, to become a portal for Africa in economy. Not only to bring people to have their economic, to consider Egypt as economic hub for Africa, but also to export the construction, to export the engineering expertise we created. We learned a lot, and now we merged the international to the local, and the experience is much bigger than before. So I think now the government and everybody should look to Egypt as economic hub, not only internally but outside. We are a golden chance for the Middle East now. They don't have investment files, and they have money, and we have investment files, but we don't have enough finance. So we are very attractive. All the funds now are looking to Egypt from a different perspective, not like before. And I think if we don't look forward for how to position Egypt and how to market the Egyptian market, not only in industry, but as overall development, I think we will miss this chance. And now we have to think in the coming 2-3 years to have this positioning.
Okay. So I think all our speakers now, they more or less agree that the sector is experiencing a very healthy, exciting era. It's the renaissance of the construction, infrastructure, and real estate business in Egypt. Now, I would like to address the entire panel, all our speakers, with this question. So far, the growth in the sector has been mainly stimulated by the government investments. What are the measures that can be taken in order to ensure sustainability and continuity of the construction, infrastructure, and real estate business in Egypt? And I would like to start by Mr. Khaled Mostafa. So how do you see it?
This part.
I think it was mentioned in many of my colleagues' comments. Finally, Mr. Tarek, when he talked about the population of Egypt, the rate of growth, we expect the Egyptian population to exceed 130 million by the year 2030. And by the year 2050, we will be close to 200 million. And with that rate of growth and also the composition of that population, again, the demographics, creates a huge demand, a huge need for two things, or for three things, as a matter of fact. First of all, for immediate, let's say, consumer type of construction, like houses, etc. But also it requires economic growth, which means construction in other sectors, like factories, like hotels, like etc. So it requires that as well. Number three, it requires new space. You cannot just limit yourself to one project here and one project there. You know that the government has launched a package of what they call, or what we call, a fourth generation urbanization, urban developments. Why is that? To meet the demand, to meet the needs that will be created. So between those three needs and between the required economic growth to keep the country moving forward and to keep generating jobs for people, you automatically need growth of construction. You cannot do it with the current available units or the current available space. It's as simple as that. We have to do it. It's a must. It's not a luxury. It's not nice to do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khaled. Thank you so much. Mr. Tarek ElGamal.
Yes,
so
please.
How do you see it? What are the measures that has to be taken?
Let me tell you about a discussion between me and the Minister of Housing, Dr. Asim Al-Gazzar. This was like a quick discussion. He mentioned that we're not intending, and this was, I believe, in one of the conferences in public, or maybe it was the American Chamber or something. It was an open discussion. This issue was raised. He told everybody, guys, we're not coming here to stay. This is only, maybe we'll stay, and this for sure, this was before the COVID. We're planning to start leaving by 2022. As for after the COVID, you can never tell, because this is not only Egypt. If you go even to the United States, the top of the free markets in the world, you can tell about the amount of bailouts to all companies. It's very clear, because as it was stated in one of the business news channels, nobody's gonna of the private sector is gonna put money to create jobs the coming 2 years globally. Okay, yeah. So let's get back to Egypt. When you see the new cities, what they call it, the fourth generation cities. Actually, I've been here in working in this sector maybe since 1982. It always started this way. It starts residential, and maybe after years and years, we start doing education. We start doing commercial real estate. We start doing services. So it always was done the opposite way. So this is what Dr. Asim again mentioned, that we this time we're starting to do the cities the proper way. We start with the services. We start with the education. We start with the jobs, maybe the industrial parks. And this kind of investment, no way it could be done by the private sector, because the private sector is looking for the off-plan model, because they are all short in working capital, high interest rates, name it. So they started to put the model for the high-rise buildings, which is, I believe, is maybe if you, I've been to a place in London, it's like a grant from Siemens to City of London. It's a place called the Crystal, where they show you all the cities of the world. You can go and visit it. It's in the Canary Wharf for sure after the COVID. They tell you that by 2030, 70% of the world population will move again to live in the cities. The 30% is maybe for the food, agriculture, and so no, the private sector does not have the pockets to do this high rise.
Yes,
started to do, and you see like companies I don't want to mention any company started to do high rise, and this was of course at the end of the 70s. Egypt was doing a lot of this stuff, so it's getting back, but somebody have to set the model, because this is the way for to absorb the population, for the growth, for and stuff like that. Okay, so they are only setting the model to pave the ground for the private sector to come and start. And you can see the private sector now, maybe companies like never worked in real estate, and they are global companies like Orascom, maybe in Z Towers. When you look at this, they are coming because they have seen the model set by the government is working. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tarek. So basically, Egyptians are builders by nature and by history. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, I would love to hear it from Mr. Ahmed. Youssef, you give us a detailed recipe for success. So how would you like to recap on the future of the industry?
Thank you so much again. Yes, I agree with Mr. Abdelnasser, Mr. Tarek, and Mr. Khaled Mostafa that the sustainability is there based on the local population growth. However, sometimes our capability, I foresee that the capability of the construction industry will surpass the demand inside our country. And that's why we have to be prepared to cross the borders and look for and reach to other markets. However, inside Egypt, we are cooperating with the Egyptian government in creating new investment opportunities, which of course will stimulate the industry. And of course, any growth in any other economic sector, important economic sector, will also have a positive impact on the construction industry growth rate. The government will launch very soon its first Giga project, which of course will entail all our collaborative efforts in the construction industry to meet the ambitions of the Egyptian government. I thank you all and wish you all a great day.
Sounds so exciting. Thank you so much, Mr. Youssef. And finally, I have the last minute with Mr. Taha. So, Mr. Taha, how would you see the future of the real estate and construction sector? We have less than a minute now to go.
Okay, I think I have only one word. The growth of any nation in economy is mainly based on industry. This is time for industry. The industry is a backup for the construction industry. It's backup for, we have to create our building material industry. We have to export construction and export also everything behind the construction. I think this is now time for the government, and we have to advise the government. We have to work together on changing our economy to more sustainable economy, mainly by industry, education to serve the industry, finance to serve the industry, housing to serve the industry. I think now the key word for the coming years, we have to insist on creating industrial management system able to take the growth of Egypt in the economy and everything else.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taha. I think that's it. The message is super clear from our speakers today. The construction, infrastructure, and real estate sector will continue to drive the growth of the Egyptian economy, not only for years to come, but maybe for decades to come. All what it needs is to attract more foreign direct investment, more international partners, help to export our local capacity and our contractors' capacity to other neighbor countries. We need to depend on more scientific solutions. We need to use and capitalize on the resources we're having in this market. Well, as you can see, our speakers are so eager, are so passionate about this sector. If you are an investor and you're looking for your next big opportunity, I think we have just answered the question. That was it from the Big Five Digital Festival. That was me, Samar, Raouf, and we were just talking about an overview of the booming construction sector in Egypt. Thank you for joining us. And now we will open the floor for the question. Thank you so much.
A really fascinating panel, that one on Egypt's booming construction market. And thank you so much to Samar, the founder of Cairo Business Radio, for moderating that so brilliantly for us. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of our panel who are still with us. As we turn our attention to our audience Q&A, let's start with our first question, which is for Mr. Khaled. How is the ministry collaborating with the private sector? What are the incentives that the government offers to foreign investors to attract them to Egypt to establish or expand their business? Mr. Khaled.
Thank you for the great question. I believe it's not only the ministry on its own. In fact, it's a group effort by the entire cabinet, coordinated maybe or orchestrated by the ministry being in charge of economic development. And as I mentioned a while ago, it's actually the entire sector is seen as a locomotive of the economic development, a driver sector. And this is why it's very, very important. When we go to the incentives, in fact, it's not like direct incentives, but it's in two forms, in two shapes, actually. It's in the form of market making, let's call it this way, by creating new projects, new markets. Either it's what we call large national projects, be it infrastructure, be it something like the economic zone in the Suez area, etc., being like the administrative capital and so on. And these automatically, first of all, they create a need for huge construction work, which is automatically an opportunity for a private sector, because the government might take care of fundamental infrastructure, is not going to do everything on its own. In fact, it prefers that the private sector takes over. Also, after that stage of construction, automatically the real estate space is created, the space for offices is created, the space for mixed use, as it was explained earlier from one of the speakers, will be created. So that's one way, creating new spaces, creating new markets. And in fact, in that, it's not only about just the government coming up overnight and deciding to do that. We open a lot of dialogue with private sector and other stakeholders to identify and decide the opportunities. And this is where it comes the answer to your second part of the question. How do we attract foreign investors and so on? In fact, we are working in a very open way with international organizations like World Bank, like the EBRD, European Investment Bank and others, where we share our Vision 2030 and what it entails from infrastructure, urban development, new communities to be created, what are our priorities, etc., etc. And that automatically, when the foreign investors see these institutions having the trust, having the confidence to go inside in the Egyptian market and maybe invest in some projects, maybe even finance the studies required for these projects, it gives them confidence that Egypt is really serious about that. One example is the Monorail Project now, which is actually a partnership between the Egyptian government, between an Egyptian, a government-owned construction company, as well as a private sector company, as well as Bombardier, which is an international company coming to operate in Egypt. So that's the way we are operating. Another way is the dialogue I mentioned earlier. We open with the private sector and others to upgrade the standards of our real estate, to upgrade the standards of our urban planning, so that everybody moves to a higher level and everybody has a better mood of doing business.
A lot of that, of course, is driving awareness, of course, isn't it? So Samar, what about the commitment of the sector to sustainable development? Great moderation there as well, by the way, Samar. But yes, what about the commitment of the sector to sustainability?
Laura, thank you so much for the question. I think this would take an entire panel to answer the question. But let me just, for sake of answering the question, let's say that sustainability comes to the heart of construction. Construction is about building. And when we speak building, it's not about building concrete walls or roads or bridges. We build cities, we build communities, we build the capacities of the people. So that's about sustainability at large. If we're talking specifically about SDGs, so all players of the construction sector, they have a strong commitment to the delivery of the SDGs, and they follow up on this commitment. So for job opportunities, for example, the industry is known as an intensive labor industry. So the sector employs or creates millions of job opportunities. They also work on building the capacities of the people who work on this sector. And here we are not only talking about graduates of universities, but we're talking about vocational training, which is a key segment in our population. So that's for job opportunities. Also, the sector stands for health and safety. And one of the very few businesses that try to create awareness about health and safety in our community. So this is a key pillar for the sector. In terms of environment, and the sector has been always accused for like violating the environmental standards, but also players of the sector are strongly committed to R&D, to work on the development of their impact on the environment and on the usage of natural resources. So the sector has piloted, for example, the migration to renewable energy and other solutions that always been brought by the construction sector. So I think a very strong commitment to sustainability at large, and people who work on this sector, they know that they stand for a cause. It's not only a job. So sustainable development comes to the heart of the construction sector.
Well, very good to know there is a strong commitment there from some of the main big players, of course. Tarek, what do you think is going to be the biggest innovation for the construction industry in Egypt over the next few years? Innovation really has been quite a hot topic throughout the day, actually. So what's next for Egypt?
Actually, we're seeing innovation on the ground here in Egypt for over the last 3 years, but I believe also there is a lot of things coming. As actually most of on the technical side, as I maybe mentioned before, we're adopting now the most updated softwares like the BIM, which is the Building Information Module, and there is a software called the Revits. I believe that many of the big, maybe 10 or 20 companies now, they are using this kind of software, which is helping a lot. And it was very clear during the COVID thing, because this also gives like a momentum for all of this. And we have seen a lot of applications due to this social distancing. So we're in doing the handing over the different activities. We used a lot of this kind of application, and it gives it a boost. And people realize nowadays that the physical existence is not really the only. You can use many other avenues. Saving time and saving effort and saving saving also money. So this one helps. And on the business side of construction, we're seeing a lot of high rises going on. High rises mixed use ones. As for the infrastructure, we're using the smart infrastructure now for the digitalization. Everybody's knows now about the digitalization, and it's in the make now. The fiber optics is considered now a common thing for any infrastructure. The data centers, all this CCC, which is the city control. The BMS, all this stuff. So it's really now it's becoming like a common language now. Okay. In the construction industry, of course. Okay.
Well, a very exciting future when it comes to innovation, of course. It's a great time to innovate as well, of course. Ahmed, over to you. I've got a question for you. What is needed from the key players in the market to react to the steps taken by the government to keep the construction development progress? Ahmed, Youssef.
Hi, thank you. I think that the government is committed to inject more investments in the construction industry to boost and to meet the needs of infrastructure and housing and real estate in construction industry. And thus, the contractors are required to grow their capabilities and become bigger and provide all the needed resources and qualified resources to meet all the requirements of the expansion of the construction industry in order to keep the momentum of the GDP progress rate in Egypt. They have to, of course, meet all the requirements of sustainability. They have to train their workers. They have to recruit good calibers with special expertise and acquire new technologies from all over the world. And last but not the least, they have to combine all the efforts with other stakeholders in the market, like consultancy offices, like fellow contractors and competing contractors. They have to join all forces, and combine all forces in order to meet the construction industry in Egypt and across the borders of Egypt. From other stakeholders like financial institutions and banks, I think that they need to revisit their interest rates and their legislations and try to provide, of course, in cooperation with the government, in order to provide low interest rate loans for not only the contractors to meet the financial requirements of the projects, but also for developers who can get loans and invest in order to have two pillars, not only the governmental investment, but also a private sector investment based on low rate and long-term loans. I think this is, in brief, what is required from the main players, the key players in the construction industry. Thank you so much.
Very valid key points and great advice. So thank you to Ahmed. Youssef, our final question is to Abdelnasser. What are the rules and regulations of the Real Estate Association that you've established, the FIABCI in Egypt? And what tools does it offer to real estate developers in the region as well?
Thank you for the question. In fact, I want to tell that FIABCI, the International Federation, play for us the role of an international platform. This platform gives us a lot of benefits. When we are connected to this platform, we learn from the experience of others. The most important point that we are having a very big exposure. People see us and we see people, and what's happening in Egypt in the construction market and urban and development is very exceptional over the last 5 years. Now people over 60 countries see what's happening in Egypt, and nobody can believe that this side of development is running here. So this is the second point. For directly answer your question about regulations, we have to know that United Nations, the main partner with the UN Habitat in the definition and shaping the final declaration of in the sustainability was FIABCI. And tens of events and participation from all over the world with United Nations to shape the final declaration of the sustainability. Also, FIABCI bring the tool how to measure sustainability as well, not how to define sustainability. So we have a scale to measure all aspects of sustainability to define where we are in public transportation, in economy, and all the aspects of the sustainability over the 4 big pillars of sustainability. Again, for the registration, we have to learn a lot from the experience of many countries in the property registration. The property registration is one of the main factors controlling and knowing more about the business and the treasure we have. We cannot quantify the size. We cannot quantify the property ownership, and it is extremely important for security, for finance, for regulations. And this is one of the major files, big files, which we have to learn from the experience of so many countries, how they went to this file and how they find solution instead of creating the solution from our side only. We don't need to invent. We can learn from other, and also we can exchange from other. An additional point that we from this exposure we can attract people to come more to Egypt and invest in Egypt, and also to have an added value with technology, because in many countries they have solutions which we don't have, especially in the operation. As Mr. Tarek said, innovation now is coming everywhere, but I think this is time for innovation in the operation as well, not only in the construction. The FIABCI is playing an important role for us and for to be part of this big platform.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Sadly, that's all we've got time for. However, we do have time for some key takeaways from each of you. We'd really love for you to wrap up the session with some of the key highlights and some of the key messages you'd like our audience to go away with today. Khaled, please start us off just in a couple of sentences on some of the key highlights from today.
Well, I would say the whole market is, and the whole sector, construction sector in Egypt is booming and is going to grow for very fundamental reasons, and it's not just superficial. The government is very open to exchange ideas, plans, so on with different stakeholders. I believe the other side also, I mean, the different stakeholders are very open to have the dialogue with the government. It's our role on both sides of the table to make this matchmaking where we can meet and move the entire sector forward, because from an economic development standpoint, it's a very, very critical and very, very high priority sector that we have all the will and all the intention to move it forward. So we look forward.
Thank you so much. Khaled, Mostafa. Ahmed, Youssef, your final key highlights, please.
Collaboration. Collaboration is what is needed from all stakeholders in the construction industry in order not to reach a saturation point and keep the momentum of the progress rate of this industry. We need to collaborate with government in order to open more investment opportunities and inject investment from its side and encourage the investment from the private sector, from the contractors, is to grow bigger and meet all the requirements from banks and financial institutes to provide all the finance needed, and from consultancy to consultant offices is to meet all the requirements of the contractors and clients in order to keep the momentum. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ahmed. Youssef, Tarek, ElGamal, what are your key takeaways?
Actually, the selection of this panel, it's very clear. It shows the integration. We're having governmental bodies, consultants, business organizations, private sector, and I feel we're talking the same language. And it's not only about people are thinking that this construction is going in one direction, which is residential or real estate. It's not really that one. It's the infrastructure. It's everywhere. It's the commercial buildings, service buildings, and it will. And from my side, I believe it will sustain over the time, because maybe it's going to be added the tourism when it comes back, the industry. Many things, the oil and gas, when it starts to pick up. Actually, we're now talking like we are one body, which is, I believe, a very good product of the boom, which has been here for the last 3 or 4 years. Thank you, dear.
Samar, Raouf, your key messages for our audience today.
Well, I would say the construction sector is driving the growth of the economy. We still have a big room for improvement. Let's continue to support the sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And last and certainly not least, Abdelnasser, Taha, what are your final remarks, please, for us?
I have only 2 keywords. I think after what happened last years, we have to move international. This is time for Egypt to go international with experience in consultancy, open international markets for construction companies, exchange with other countries in bringing and grabbing investment to Egypt. This is time for Egypt to talk, move, and work international.
What a fantastic panel. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us, for taking the time out and sharing your knowledge so openly with us. We have learned so much over the last 45 minutes. Thank you so much once again to our panel there. Thank you.